June 1st, 2020, Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission regular meeting. Can we start with roll call, Jamie?
Yes. Jason Steenblock.
Here.
Terry Steenblock.
Here.
Tim Miller.
Here.
Tim Gary. Doug Ramseth.
Here.
And Karen Moorhead.
Here. All right. Let's see. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Anybody want a motion?
I move that we approve the agenda as submitted.
Second. There's a motion and a second to approve the agenda. as
They
submitted.
just let us in, sorry. We'd have sure loved to see your face if they hadn't.
I'm like, I hope she's not standing out there and freezing.
They were for a little bit, but we're nice and warm in here.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
That's funny.
That was funny.
All right, so we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And motion carries. For open forum, there's nobody here, so we can skip over that and go right into the regular, excuse me, the regular agenda. So, it's 5A is chair appointments.
All right, so members of the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission, this is our first year of the new year. So with that, it's the opportunity to set a chair and a vice chair. Chair serves as the, essentially the liaison between the city and the Parks Commission, meeting to discuss agenda items, preparing an agenda, any other activities as it relates to moving our work forward. And the vice chair's role is to really serve as the chair in the event that our chair is not present at a meeting. So the vice chair would assume that responsibility to lead a meeting and whatnot. So with that, tonight it's a nomination kind of deal. If someone's interested in being chair, continuing, you can certainly make nominations tonight, but it's just two separate motions for first chair position and then a vice chair. So if there's any questions, otherwise I'm open to any nominations, motions, starting with the chair for the commission.
Jamie, I would like to nominate Terry Steenbach for Chair of the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission.
Okay, is that in the form of a motion or
Yes.
motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. I know you're the current serving chair, so motion and a second, so I'll let you kind of continue with that. Are there
Any other nominations for chair?
Is that something that you're open to if approved?
I would be happy to.
All right.
Good.
You want to take it to vote now?
So, okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And I'm assuming I abstain. So,
That works.
one abstention.
All right.
Thank you.
And then also then for a vice chair, we're looking for a nomination or nomination on that.
Who's vice chair now, can you ask?
Mr. Miller.
I nominate Ms. Kim Miller. Mr. Kim Miller for vice chair.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second for Tim Miller for the vice chair. Any discussion? Any other nominations? Hearing no discussions or additions?
Little discussion.
Yes.
Give me the key to get in.
That's a really big one.
I'm a little rusty, it's been months, so.
Okay. So I'm totally out of
All in
whack here. So all in favor of Tim Miller as vice chair?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstain? Okay, so that motion carries.
All right, well, thank you.
Before we move on, can we just recognize too
Yes.
that the city council appointed Karen Moorhead at the last meeting again, so congratulations and thank you.
Thank you for being back.
For being back.
To work with, and I see good things in the future, so
Good.
thank you.
And then Jack has also tendered his resignation, so I believe that the city council will be working on filling that vacancy as well, so. Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Okay, so next on the agenda, Arts in the Park promoter contract.
Thank you. So this will be kind of quick tonight. At our meeting in November, the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission did review a contract with Woody McBride, which was approved with a few stipulations regarding the cancellation and reschedule policy, ensuring that we have insurance coverage provided at the time of the contract, and breach of contract language. So as I've been working through that, I realize it's could potentially restructure more substantial content in the language of the contract. And I had high hopes to have it here today, but we are unfortunately still in contract negotiations with Mr. McBride. I did provide, positive feedback from the commission, just that we're just looking to kind of make some components of it a little more black and white or clear as to what happens if, all of a sudden you have to move out of town, for example, and we've already paid you that lump sum, what would happen, he said valid point. And so we're just working through those little details. What we foresee is potentially just changing that payment structure from the contract that was approved at the commission level. Right now, at the time a contract is signed, we pay a dollar amount, and then we have 3 different payment times throughout the year, and it's more that lump sum, like $1,200 is due July 5th or whatever that date might be. We're gonna maybe look at a weekly payment so that he's paid day of, so we're not prepaying, so if there would be a breach of contract, whether he doesn't show up for a given Tuesday, then he's not paid that Tuesday. So I think it's gonna help clarify some of the language and questions that were brought forward from the commission level. Similarly with the cancel and reschedule, we're looking at some terms with that of what it is that we would be comfortable with if it's, allowing up to 2 rain dates where he's paid at 100% or he's paid at 50% after 1 rain date. So just, again, continuing that contract negotiation, so we weren't quite ready to get it here as I indicated as separate cover. I'm happy to take any questions or any additional comments on it. Otherwise, the action tonight is just a table to our next meeting that we have. So if there's any questions or comments based on the direction that we're working on, I guess I can turn it over to commission for that. Otherwise, action to table till our next meeting.
Do you need a motion for that?
Yes, please.
We'll have a motion to table till next meeting, the Arts in the Park promoter contract.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of tabling the Arts in the Park promoter contract to the next?
Aye.
Opposed? And motion carries. I'm an aye too, I forgot to say aye. All right, so next up is the 2020 work plan.
All right, so members of the commission, included in the packet tonight is a draft work plan for Q1 and Q2 for 2020. And I'm just gonna cue this up, and then I know Terry wanted to comment a little bit on, this piece as well, but really what we put together here tonight is just a summary of a lot of the work that was done last year. I think we're moving into a new year with most of our commission carrying forward, positioned well, I think, from a strategic and planning perspective. So really, hopefully this will guide us in our work so that we can kind of start digging in and getting things off of the list with a focus to that. So with that said, I'll let Terry kind of talk a little bit more about the details listed here in the plan, and really what we're looking for tonight is to just formally approve and adopt what we see before us tonight, and then start working on these specific items. So with that, Terry, if you have any further comment on this?
Yeah, so as Jamie mentioned, this is kind of a summary of the work that we did in phases over the last few meetings towards the end of the year. So you'll notice on the front page here, one of the things we did was we rewrote the mission and the vision statement. And so what you see on here was, we were upstairs when we did that meeting. So what you see on here is the new mission and vision statement that we had all agreed on. On page 2, you'll notice, so some of the work that we did as it related to this spreadsheet, mine is really, well, actually mine's really tiny, but can you read that, Kim? Mine's just anyways, the work that we did in relation to the spreadsheet, so this started with where we solicited feedback from the community through through the social media platforms, and then we also had the listening sessions upstairs. Those all got captured and put into this spreadsheet, and then we spent some time breaking them down, so we talked about, the capital improvement items. So the capital improvements that you'll see on here, like Belts Park, Dog Park, those were the priorities that we had identified, as they related to capital improvements. The budget and financial, so all the things that you see here were the things that bubbled up onto this spreadsheet, either through community feedback or through, things that we had, that were on here. You'll notice there's just one thing that I did want to point out. So, under partnerships and agreements, you'll notice that we had a lot more partnership opportunities on here than we had on this list. But I think some of them will flush out. So for example, there was some items to do some partnerships in relation to, dance classes and things along those natures that I think may shake out under the Forest Lake Schools and the community education. So all those partnerships aren't listed here, but Forest Lake Schools is listed here as one of the potential. But we won't lose track of these, we'll be able to come back and cross-reference, but I just wanted to point that out.
Is there any update on the Castlewood Golf Course?
That'll be later.
That's one of the agenda items we'll
Okay.
talk about later, yep. So this sheet is basically just these were some of the things that we talked about and identified that were going to be priority items, and they're just on one page so that if we wanna reference it, we can just look at one page versus, so as somebody comes forward and says, hey, let's redo Schilling Park, we can say, okay, well, right now we've got Belts and we've got the dog park and the loop trail, we can put that on the list, but right now these are the priorities. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Makes a lot of sense.
And then, as you look at the goals that are here, the goals all tie back to one of the, initiatives supported, so you see partnerships and agreements, you see budget and financials. So that would help us quickly identify, here's the goal, this is the initiative that it ties to, and here's some of the action steps and the deliverables that have to get done. So what we did was look at the work that needed to be done just between now and Q1 and Q2, which ironically is through the end of May. I mean, it's not that far away, it seems far away, but there was a lot of work. So what we were thinking is this would be the working work plan. These would be the goals that we would have on there. And then they tie back to the strategic plan, they tie back to the initiatives and the feedback that we received, and essentially, we would know that at every one of our meetings, we're gonna review this plan, and Jamie, almost like a Gantt chart or project management, Jamie will be able to say, this was the goal, and here's our progress, this is where we're at with these tasks. So we can review that at every meeting. And then we did talk about building the maintenance list, which is one of the goals that's on this list. Once we get that maintenance list built, then we can look at that every meeting as well and know what Dave and his folks have done and what's left on the list and where we need to add there. So essentially, this is kind of our working plan for the next 2 quarters with the goal that we'll review this, these priorities and their progress. And then once we're done with these 2 quarters, or probably before we get done with the second quarter, we'll take a look at the list and where things are at, and we'll create the work plan for the 3rd and the 4th quarter. If that makes. Again, trying to get a little bit of organization and transparency, we would all be able to say, yep, you know, for example, dog park's on the list, but right now our goals are these. We would all have something we could reference and talk to. So that's a little background I wanted to share, and we wanted, it's a draft, but we wanted to get feedback from you guys and see if we could approve this as the document for moving forward for the next 2 quarters. Questions or feedback, comments?
or changes or additions,
Yeah.
if there's anything
Yeah.
that might have been missed or,
And each
You'd like
one
to
of
add?
these, you know, the commission will have some involvement, so keeping in mind we're a staff of one. So Jamie and then we would have a role, so, you know, for example, thinking about the, updating the Fenway agreement, we're gonna have to review that agreement, we're gonna have to understand how and what's different, and then approve that agreement for, so each one of these, the subcommittee, committees may have some roles, but we as a commission will also have a role, so. I'll stop there.
So if we approve this tonight, it'll just be this CDI document, whatever changes are right, or make them now. And, okay.
Is this gonna be a working document that will, as things go off the list, we will be able to add to?
Yes,
Things like that, so
yep,
it's not necessarily set in stone until the list is complete, it's adjustable as things may come up or.
yes, I would say it's I think approving it tonight is agreement that these are the 8, I think we ended up with 8 goals that are in our forefront right now of our focus. Knowing that things could come and change, but this is a guiding document for commissioners to utilize if you get a community request when you're out and about, and just say, you know, we're all on the same page, knowing that, you know, no, that's not on our list, it's a great idea, let's bring it to the commission to discuss where that might fit into our work plan. So it's more of a process and a guide, so that we don't have things interjecting our priorities right now, and we have to then, if a new request would come in, it'd go to every commission meeting to say, okay, here's the community request or the need, and how does that fit into the plan? And then I think on a monthly basis at meetings is when it would be approved to add this in this work plan, if that makes sense.
Yep.
This is a starting point to guide and get everyone on the same page as we start the new year.
and the nice thing is like I said, if somebody came in, let's say we had somebody come tonight and say, we wanna completely revamp Schilling Park, we would be able to listen to the feedback and at least know that here's what we've got for some priorities. Do we wanna do Schilling before we do Belts? Do we wanna, you know, and then when we update the plan, then does revamping Schilling go on here and something else comes up or whatever, or,
But it's added to it, right?
Oh,
yep,
And what other, did you have a comment?
Well, I'm wondering, so this is for quarter 1 and quarter 2 work plan, and all of the items that are listed here are not necessarily in here. And so, do we anticipate that what's not on here for Q1 and Q2 will be in Q3 and Q4, or?
so that's a good question, this page is my fault. I probably shouldn't have labeled it Q1 and Q2,
Okay,
because this page, what I was looking for was to kind of recap the top things that bubbled up in,
Right.
under these categories. So I really should have probably done it maybe as a separate document or labeled it with a different header, but yeah, these were the things that we all said were important and priorities. So, yeah, so like right now, Belts is on there, Belts may take more than Q1 and Q2, right? It may
Mhm.
take
Ongoing.
3 years or whatever,
Right.
whatever it is, but let's say we finish up something and we wanna go next, dog park, would we say dog park was next? Because that's how we prioritize them, and then we would add that on. This is just more of a
Quick glance.
page to, yeah, quick glance is a great way to label it, but
Should we come up with a different title for this page?
That seems like a great
Yeah.
That we
suggestion.
can
Add a Q array, quick.
probably, and like,
Summary of work
yeah,
or something of that nature.
or initiatives, or, I don't know, yeah, summary of work.
or priority initiatives?
I like that.
Yeah. And I think just a comment that I was gonna make, just for example, looking at partnerships and agreements, the first one is the Castlewood Golf Course, the next one is Fenway Athletic Complex. And then there's others listed that are also extremely important to us, but just knowing from the Q1, Q2 perspective, spring will be here before we know it, and those are things that
We need those.
we need these, established and finalized, so I mean, that is gonna take quite a bit of time that, what if the snowmobile club comes to the city in April and wants to start talking about the next year? Well, that gives us kind of the direction to say, we're working on these two things because they're time sensitive and priorities. Let's schedule a meeting out for when we can get to that next on our list, same with schools, so it helps us kind of stay focused on our work
Mhm.
and not bounce around too much, and be fair to the community partners. It's not that we wanna establish as many partnerships as we can, but they all take time and resources to do so, so just guiding that process strategically.
Going forward, I mean, finish with policy for the arts in the park. Do we ever have a vendor handbook?
Great question. We do have a vendor handbook.
Oh,
I can send that out to the commission. That the reason this is a goal is I think as the program and event continues to grow, the demand to be a vendor is significantly increased. And some questions that I have, being that I see all the applicants and kind of understand the process, is at what point, we don't have anything in our handbook that is policy around number of vendors we select and how many years can you be a vendor in a row before we give somebody else the opportunity to be a vendor. So for example, somebody comes in and is selling 31 bags and they've been there for 5 years. Well, I've got people that sell 31 bags that are, when can I get a chance to be at Arts in the Park? So I think we need to look at some policy updates as the event grows, and also just to revisit type of vendors we're allowing, again,
is the
kind of
nonprofits in there, how do we handle that?
how the nonprofits are handled. Do we accept single night vendors? If so, how many? And some of those logistical things, because I love filling the park, but sometimes when you have a single night vendor, what's the policy? How far in advance do you need to let the city know? There's a lot of detail and coordinating to go into getting one vendor into the event for a one night, whether it's they need a payment or they just need to know where to go, who to talk to. So I think that's where we're at, is really looking at the existing handbook and then having some discussion and decisions on how do we update that policy to accommodate growth in the event.
It would be good to see that, because I know there was like an uprising about politics and arts in the park. And I think we added it to the policy that there would be no stand where they would collect money, or that they could walk the park on their own, but they couldn't have, we didn't want to turn it into a political field and have everybody set up a stand. I don't know if that's still in there or not.
There is something in there about that,
Okay.
but to review it I think would be good, and I don't think that goal is gonna be too difficult to overcome. It might be a small committee group a little bit and just kind of talking through some of these items I just briefly mentioned, so.
And I think as we review some of this stuff, it's an opportunity I'm a big fan of plain language and, transparency, so it gives us the opportunity to also look at how they're laid out and where they go. Is there a centralized repository so that people know, well, what's the policy on this? I go here, and so it's an opportunity, I think, there as well.
I think I've gotten a pretty good system down, and not to talk about the event, but scheduling and assigning locations allows us to maximize the space within the park and guarantee that we have a full park most of the week. So it's a little more coordinating, and I think we know our maximum capacity for the most part, and just really figuring out who we let in, why, and how often they can come back and whatnot, so.
Do we have any city residents who are vendors?
Yes,
Do they receive any kind of priority?
not currently based on policy. Right now, our policy is priority goes to returning vendors in good standing. And we have different product category types, so, I've noticed last year we did have quite a bit more demand and people traveling into Forest Lake from up to an hour away to be a vendor, which, is no problem, but just things to look at as we consider what is the priority for selecting vendors and what, I think, product type, what do we want the event to be, is there a cap on how many of commercial products, or do we just try to get back to, art as people doing homemade crafts, things like that.
So that's one of the, I mean, I think the conversation kind of illustrates why it should be on here, or something that we look at.
And I've just noticed that in the last year or so with the increasing demand, and I've already fielded quite a few calls about people looking to be vendors, which I think is a little early for that, which is good. I just kind of feel like this pulse is coming and we're gonna have a really high response on vendors for this year again.
The sponsorship program is on here as well, because we got some feedback from, Tim Gary wanted to, work on that a little bit more. He had some feedback, and then Jack sent us, an example of a sponsorship policy, so we figured it needs more work, so we'll put it on here as a goal and have the small team, the budget and the finance team look at that, clean it up, incorporate the feedback that we've gotten, and then bring it back here, so I just wanted to highlight that one as well, because I know we've talked about that one in the past, and just explain why it's on here, because we got some feedback and we need some more time.
Well,
Any other questions or comments?
I'll make a motion to accept the 2020 work plan as we modified, with the new heading of priority initiatives on the second page.
I'll second.
So we have a motion to accept with the modification of priority initiatives on page 2, and a second. Do we have any additional conversation?
I think something in about it's a working document, I mean, just so we know it can be flexible. And I think we discussed that, so I'm pretty comfortable that it will be, but
I can put on there, approved January 21st, to be updated or reviewed monthly. Would that, something like that added
yeah,
to
so
the
if something
document?
comes up, it's not like this is absolutely the end all, but probably will be, but you never know.
Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so next is the Park and Recreation sponsorship opportunities, which I touched on a little bit already, but.
Yep, I will jump into this, and before we kind of get into the discussion items, I just want to kind of make a note with how our agendas are formatted. There are going to be meetings where we don't have a lot of action items just because of the nature of the work we're doing, so we'll get through any things. I know park event permits will be coming up soon and things of that nature, but otherwise it's an opportunity to kind of have a 2-for-1 of kind of be more of a workshop format for us to get some work done while we're here, and therefore hopefully stick to our meeting schedule and not have too many extra meetings unless we need to for a certain specific reason. So with that, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the sponsorship goal that we have. Again, we did get some feedback, and as I looked at some models in other communities, our original idea was to have a really large sponsorship package that would allow somebody to sponsor multiple community events that we run. And logistically tracking the deliverables on that seemed to be a little difficult on what are you gonna get for each event. Each event is weighted differently based on attendance. So through research and just conversations, I found some examples I'm gonna show you tonight just to kind of talk about the direction I think we should go. Just looking for any feedback on things that you see that you might like or dislike, information that you would like to have included, really anything on the table so that I can take that information and then by our next meeting get a draft put together, a nice, pretty final version. So, so that'll pull up a couple examples here. Just give me one quick second. And I think putting this together from here will be fairly easy if we're on board with the overall direction of that. Let me just grab these examples. And I'll be set to go in just a second here. All right. Okay. Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna walk you through through a couple different examples from other communities that I pulled as examples that I think are very relatable to what we are looking to do here. I'm gonna start pretty simple. And just wanted to, I thought this example right here is a good one to talk about a concert series. Obviously, we can make it a little more fancy and elaborate, but to highlight a concert series, they have some, pretty large dollar amounts for their top sponsor, and then all of the items that are returned on investment for the potential business or organization to be involved. So it looks like this group, for example, had 4 different I think it was just 4 different sponsorship levels, starting at $10,000 all the way down to $3,000. But really, so this would be, I think we should create one opportunity just for Arts in the Park. So we would kind of have that be our premier featured flyer like this, a 1-pager that says Arts in the Park sponsorship opportunities, and then kind of determine our sponsorship packages. Obviously, it's, a 13 weeks long. Attendance weekly is 300 to 1,000 people. A lot of people coming in town from other communities, so I think we have a lot to leverage there as a really good sponsorship opportunity for businesses in the community. So this is one example, and I thought modeling something like this for Arts in the Park would be good. They also have an Independence Day celebration for their evening show, and for our city's 4th of July festivities, the American Legion really runs all the fundraising efforts for the most part. They run the parade, carnival, and a lot of the activities. However, the city's Parks Commission, we do help support fireworks. I think this year we're contributing $12,000 to the fireworks show at the park. And then we probably spend about $1,000 on the entertainment at the park for the event. So we do have an opportunity, I think, here to look at, from our perspective, a fundraising opportunity at Arts in the Park, 4th of July at the park. So I wanted to include an example here of if we wanted this to be part of our sponsorship program. I think we certainly could have, a band sponsor and some other sponsorship opportunities within the park. Thirdly, they also have a Movies Under the Moon, and we have led a movie series periodically with different businesses, and I'd like to get that program reestablished. But again, that would just be something that's part of our program. We can list movies in the park, and we can pick 3 dates and then have the opportunity for people to sponsor here. Fall Festival is another example, which would be similar to our Lake Fest. The city, in partnership with the school, put on Lake Fest, and we do really solicit sponsorship. So I think the objective of this is to not have to reach out to all the businesses and multiple times for the year. It's a complete sponsorship package and program that outlines all of the opportunities throughout the course of a year, and they can pick and choose up front what they want to be involved in. So that's just a few examples. I guess I don't need to go on that. We don't have any dog events, but basically it's per event they outline. So that's one format. Kind of each page is separate. Here's another example. Obviously we can have a header page and do something fancy too, but here's some, I thought this one was nice in the fact that, here's kind of just some basic information, but what I thought was nice is that, you can also look at we have like our spring fling events, we have the tree lighting ceremony, we have a couple other smaller events, so we could consider some kind of structure like this. So I wanted to share this example. Really simple, they do a little brief, what it's called and when, a brief description of it, how many people, here's your 2 options to sponsor this event, and your deadline so that you can get included in all the promotional materials, which I think is outlining this in advance is going to be extremely helpful for us on the execution side of things. So I thought this was just a quick, simple example, something that we could put together really quickly. Another thing unique to this one, they did put, they even did their concert series right in here. It didn't have to be called out anything different, but it's listed within there. And the thing I thought interesting about this, this is something different, but let me scroll down here. So they also had opportunities as part of their program for things outside of community events. So field banner sponsorship, if you want to get a little library, if you want dog waste stations, benches, tables, trees, things of that nature, which we've talked about doing. So at any given point in time, maybe we start with the events piece, but we can add to this format. And once we identify what trees we want, how much they cost, here's what you're gonna be potentially donating or sponsoring in the community. So I think it's a simple way to add. Same with events. We can add an October event if we wanted and throw this on there at any given time. This isn't really applicable. So there's that example. I'm just gonna go through one more and then just open it up for anything that you wanna talk about of what you've seen that you've liked or not. So this is a bigger community. I took out a lot of what they had because I thought it was too much for what we need, but I'm just gonna share with you. These are some testimonials, just I thought that was kind of impactful as you're pursuing businesses in the community, what the events are and how they've been received. Some of these are applicable, but some of them are not. These here I wanted to show you is they kind of summarized each event that there's opportunities for, and then they highlight the different page numbers to go later on. So obviously they have the 4th of July and a big festival. So I'm just going to scroll down to ones that are a little more applicable, like the 4th of July here. I thought this was clean, easy to follow with this little grid in there, with attendance, when the event is, and where it's located. Gives a few different, here's what you're going to get in return for your sponsorship of this event. Again, they have a lot more information. I'm not proposing that we necessarily need that, but again, here's their options for that. And it's $3,000 all the way down to $350 if you want to have a booth on site at the event. And then this is like one of their big festivals, again, just to show you the format of what we could, if we get a format in place, we can adapt to this as we have more events come on. And then lastly, I think there was one more thing on here. So other ways to get involved, you can sponsor different things at a youth event, senior programs. You know, they kind of just listed there's other ways you can get involved.
I'm sure somewhere in all the, up and down that you're doing, the thing that just stuck out at me is, no phone numbers where it would be easily accessible.
To apply to become a sponsor.
Right.
So that's the last thing I'm getting to here. I just wanted to kind of shorten things to at least show you on, basically these are like either a booklet or brochure, a pamphlet of some kind where you kind of have to look through of what is it that I'm interested in or what's applicable to my business that I want to support. But then most of these communities, or all of them, have some form of like one page that similar to this. Who are you? Give us your information and what is it that you want to sponsor. And then they send that in. So let's say I want to be a presenting sponsor at this event, so that's $10,000, and I want to be a top dog at the Pet Palooza, there's another $10,000. So they would check those two, send it in with $20,000, and then we as a city know what we owe them on their end in return for that, because we've outlined that above.
I see there is a phone number way at the bottom, but I'm a sponsor and I'm looking through these things, I'm not really sure what I want a little more information. To me, the most important thing is to have people know that there's a number to contact with a human being that can answer questions. And
Make that a little more visible.
I see that's way at the end, I don't even know if that's what it says is to call them, but.
Well, maybe as we decide what those sponsorship levels are, we come up with a pamphlet, then we, put a footer that has it on every page.
Yeah, because now we have.
So then,
a new
if you're
person.
on that page and you can go right there and look at it, something like that would be.
And a new promotional person came on, I understand, I don't know what the title was, but it was something, to sell the city, and I think that person could be a big help on something like this, to make sure that there's a human face or voice, at least, included.
Definitely.
So where does the money go?
So money that comes in would come into the city in our parks programs budget as revenue, and then that's where all the operating expense comes out as we book our entertainment and coordinate different activities for the events.
So would, if you donate for one event, this may be more as we fine tune in the subcommittee or however, but when you put money towards one event, does that, all that money goes towards that event?
Yes.
Or is there a way to, what happens if we get over sponsorship on an event? Do we have to refund that money, or does that money?
So I think that's where budgeting
Even
comes into place a little bit. I'll just use Spring Fling as an example. We had the petting zoo out, which I'm just using for sake of conversation, $750. Bounce houses, you can kind of estimate one is gonna be about $250, but the more you have, the more fun it is and everything. Food and beverage is always a good item to have a budget for. So I think we could establish a pretty accurate budget for each event, given that we don't have too many of them right now, just given our resources available. And I think that's how we can either we can set our sponsorship rates and or limit how many we receive. So some of them say limit 2.
Yep.
So when we get our 2, we know we're at our 2. So we don't exceed, obviously we need to break even,
Right.
break even. So I think that would kind of guide us a little bit, and it wouldn't be difficult for me to pull numbers on what's our budget for events. We pretty much know where we're at with Arts in the Park, and then, so setting that budget, kind of knowing what we're looking at to like break even and cover our costs, and then if we have an overwhelming response, we can just make the event bigger and better. Let's add to this or do something different that would really turn it into 200 people to like 600 people coming.
The nice thing is we'd be able to plan ahead and we would know, so like using the Spring Fling, again, we were going out and asking at that time just before that
To
for
try to get the money
donations to
for
try to
it.
get it. And at least this way, if we had a package and we could put it together, we potentially have the money way before the event and we could focus on planning the event versus trying to come up with the money.
So each particular event would obviously have a deadline to submit sponsorship so that we can make sure we meet all the deliverables. And using Arts in the Park as an example, if with this process, we look at all the boxes checked for Arts in the Park and at what sponsorship level, so it's really easy to build a spreadsheet off of that. And if one thing is we're gonna have a banner up this year every Tuesday, and you're gonna be on that if you're a sponsor. Obviously I need a little time to prepare that and get a banner printed and everything, but those are things we just haven't done. I mean, we've got social media, for items we can deliver, a banner, our schedule.
The one other thing I was thinking about instead of a banner, you know how we have our digital sign up here? I think we could find a digital sign that's pretty reasonable, and we could put that underneath the Lakeside Pavilion. So you could just type it in, and that would be the
I've seen
banner.
those.
That might make it a little bit easier, maybe.
On site, like their event message boards,
Mhm.
digital ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a whole list of benefits, and I think that I've seen a lot of, we've got people coming to the city saying, how can we be involved? And we just don't have a plan in place, so it's more reactive than proactive. So I think this will be,
So how do you, who do you get this in front of, and how do you do it? How broadly do you disseminate this, or?
I think we can really use any avenue of marketing or messaging to get this out to anybody who's interested. I think utilizing the city's weekly email, website, social media, Forest Lake Chamber, we've got a lot of other groups like Rotary and the Lions. I think just the schools, all of the school districts, and they can send that out in a message. I really think that the sky's the limit on how we do that. I don't have the exact answer, but that's my start of a list to get it out
Start.
there.
I think anybody,
So your plan is to have a smaller committee? Some have already started working on it, you said 2 people?
Yeah, we did, I didn't make recommendations on new committees yet, and I think it'd be good to keep people in their existing, committees until otherwise noted, just because I think we're getting involved and going on that. So there is a small events committee. There's also a budget and finance committee, so, working in a small group, and if we like this structure and concept, it's just a matter of pulling together some of the information and details about, the attendance and the sponsorship values, so.
So this one is, falls under that goal number 3, and it's assigned to the budget and financials group to work on and then bring back a plan that can be looked at in a larger group instead of working at real time at one of our meetings.
So is there any other things that caught your eye, or are you comfortable with this process and just bring some examples forward in a pretty version for us, for our events?
I think one, we should probably get a list, you have that list of what committees we're all
Yes, I
on,
do.
make sure we all know, but, I really like the second one that you showed, for the simplicity, of each event. Just for my 2 cents
Mhm.
quick.
So these shorter.
Yep, I like
okay.
that, although with having the table that you had with the attendance and the, you know,
Okay.
the last example, I think is very good, because that kind of gets the bullet points to them of who am I reaching? And then the guide at the end of that one was nice to have one page where you could fill out and say, here's what I wanna do.
I agree with
That's
that.
kind of my
I
quick
agree
2
with that.
cents if
No,
I'm
that's
not on that
helpful.
committee, so.
I'd like to, if it was me, you could just check a box, like, okay, I can do this, and this is where I'm gonna be at.
Yeah.
I
So
think that's a
keeping the
great idea.
content piece not to like 10 pages, but maybe a 2 to 3
Yeah.
for the content of what it is we offer, kind of that, here's your opportunities, $250 or $500, which I think is a good opportunity for our smaller community
Yeah.
events. And then a little description, keep that shorter with then filling out your sheet at the end.
And
Of
then
what you
ours in the
wanna-
park might be
Something more like,
emblematic of the first one, where it was a kind of a, but it could still be grouped into the whole pamphlet, I think.
yeah, maybe even what we can consider, and I'll work on this, but maybe even it's a 8.5 by 11, but a half of that is the arts in the park and half is the 4th of July or something, where even, you know, I can play around with that, but maybe the arts in the park does need its own page, cause it's such a big event.
Mhm.
That's
Okay.
on the right
Okay.
track though, it looks good.
Yeah.
So
Ideas.
600 people or so attend Arts in the Park each.
Sometimes.
I would say, to be fair, we probably should put more of a range of like 300
Mhm.
to 1,200. I mean, on our busiest nights, we probably have had about 1,200 people there. Community corn feed, a couple of the bigger tribute band nights. Some nights it's gonna be.
Divided, because you know, Rock and Hollywood's in the corn, certainly doesn't fall into the same schedule as, middle of the summer band.
Right,
So is there an idea of what 300 to 1,200 people are worth to a company to reach that group? You know, $10,000 seems, unless you sponsor the whole season.
Season.
That
Well,
was one of the things that Tim Gary had some thoughts on and wanted to, because he sponsors, he does a lot of sponsoring and giving back, and he was talking about, I don't know what his details, but he was talking about trying to find that value, and then also, making sure we get it in front of people as they're doing their budgeting, because
Yeah.
sometimes it's way too late by the time we come around.
right.
So,
Which could be our situation for year 1 as we
Yep.
roll this out, but I still think I've had a handful of people last year inquiring about being involved in Arts in the Park, and as we talk about Arts in the Park policy, I've had a lot of businesses that wanna be vendors at the event, and that doesn't really fit in with what we're looking for our vendor booths. We want people selling product, not informational about their business, which I'm not just, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, but this could be that opportunity to say, well, our vendor booths are designed for these types of products,
Arts
however,
and
we do have this
crafts.
opportunity, and as an Arts in the Park sponsor, you're gonna get one night with a booth or whatever we determine that to be.
Sure.
So there are a lot of people that, they just wanna be a part of the community event in some capacity, and it's been difficult to figure out how they fit in when they're not really a vendor, and we don't have a sponsorship program.
or we've had people sponsor and then they come up in their mind what they think they should get for the recognition, cause it's not
It's not
documented.
documented.
So this way it'll be consistent. If you give X to Y, it's the same regardless of who you are.
And the smaller things like trees and benches and things like that, people ask all the time. And, you know,
Yeah,
We don't have a program
I
in place.
think getting something,
Well, a tree
Going on
was this
that would
much,
be-
a bench was that much, but I think that just kind of went away.
Yeah, I didn't see, I mean, we never had anything on our website about it, and I don't know where they were getting trees from or what tree type, but I know they're talking about the tree thing tonight with emerald ash borer and things like that, we can certainly add as items on the list too.
Well, I see quite a few trees in the Bells Park,
I saw that as well.
so those are opportunities to not have that come out of our budget.
Well, we
That-
could
You know what,
certainly-
that, you know what, that may go, but like, even with the sponsorship, I mean, when we have the kids, the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts or something that wanna come in and they wanna do a project for a
Eagle Scout?
Eagle Scout or whatever it is, we could almost have a list up there too, because in the past we've done,
Mhm.
not bocce ball, but,
In the
Well,
box.
somebody did
The
the
box.
Gaga ball
and the Gaga ball.
and the little free library
Yeah,
for
so
Eagle
we could
Scout projects.
Try to get something up there so they can kinda check a box that way, and
And that could just be
It could be
listing,
a maintenance list too or something.
yeah, we can even list, you know, wanna be involved, here's some other ways, I think one had mentioned that, and put Eagle Scout projects, sponsoring a park improvement project, you know, a list of things that people could sponsor, like, you know, something different in the Parks Department, not just a community event or purchasing of an item for a park, but then maybe it's like being involved in the Belts Park Master Plan and redevelopment project, so I think we can tie that in there, so hopefully it's starting with the focus on probably the community events, given the timeliness of that, and then can just continue to add and evolve that document and information. So I took Tim's notes on kind of some of the information, is there any other, and Karen, that, to make that contact piece a little more visible and frequently, so we can see it and know who to contact. I think I have enough focus, I just wanted to make sure that this direction is appropriate, see what you like or don't like, so I can hopefully be efficient in putting together, a document to bring to the next meeting. And we're good on that?
great.
I think for the Arts in the Park piece, the intent is really, we've talked multiple times, are they gonna sponsor one night or like the whole season? And the challenge I ran into the one night sponsorship is if it gets rained out and canceled, and then what happens? And basically you're sponsoring Arts in the Park. The whole 13 weeks, here's the amounts and here's what you're gonna get based on your level. I'm gonna try to keep it simple in the fact that there's the delivery side of things to manage and track what people are getting. So keeping things simple between our website, Facebook, some signage at the event, maybe announcements at the event, things that we can make sure we're delivering.
I think that's smart, being it's the first go at it. We'll learn from it and be able to expand on it later if it needs it.
And I like it too, because if it is rained out, then what, how do you make that up?
Yeah, because
Without
now you have
trampling on the
someone-
next guy's recognition week, or, you know what I mean, so.
Okay.
If you do it out, but what you get is maybe different depending upon, I don't know, but that way you don't have. Cause we know we'll have weather, I mean, we did this last year, so.
And I think some of the other smaller community events are primarily rain or shine now. We've developed them to be rain or shine, so we shouldn't have to worry about that too much. Okay, well, that's very helpful and I appreciate that.
So then the other thing that Tim mentioned, and I have the list of groups and committees, but maybe we could have, either me or Jamie could send out who's on which ones, and then if we need to make any adjustments, we can. Does that work?
What was Jack on?
Jack was on capital improvements and
Agreements, I think.
agreements. So,
So at the next meeting, I'll bring this to the table as an agenda item.
Yep.
In case we need to reallocate some of Jack's roles, cause if he's on agreements and that's something that we have quite a bit of work to do right now, someone else may wanna jump onto that. So I will put that together for the next meeting, and we may have another commissioner at that time, I'm not certain where we're at. So, okay, well,
Great,
hopefully,
thank you.
I'll have something at the next meeting for you guys.
Valiant.
So kind of tying into city events and what we do, just a discussion tonight on our city medallion hunt. I don't know if you know the history or background of this, but for years, and Karen, you can chime in when I get done with my little spiel, but the city's used to run in partnership with the Chamber Flag Festival. It was primarily led by the Chamber, I think leading up to about 2014, and then the Chamber's involvement changed, and I think, you know, involved in the smaller capacity, not taking on the full lead in that event. We've tried our best as a city with the resources we have to continue Flag Festival, utilizing our partnerships in the community. So basically trying to coordinate a few days of activities of things to do. So free movie at the theater, or a free day at the YMCA, open skating, etc. So that was usually scheduled around the Rotary Winter Plunge, which has moved up this year to February 8th. So we've tried to just kind of tie the medallion hunt into that. A couple years ago, medallion hunt, last few years we've had kind of hit or miss turnout and participation. Actually, at one of my training seminars I went to, one of the breakout sessions I sat in on was how to run a successful medallion hunt, and it was really engaging and really interesting, the level of detail that can go into planning a medallion hunt, to be very sneaky, strategic. And there are medallion hunters, like people that go to different communities to hunt for medallions and make a lot of money off of that, whether it's the prize or cash money. So it was interesting to really understand all of that. So for discussion, I'm wanting to know what the Parks Commission would like to do. Do we want to continue with the city medallion hunt this year? Obviously it wouldn't be in conjunction with Flake Festival, or, you know, if we even keep Flake Festival going. Is it just an independent activity that we run? It's really fairly low cost. To us, we pay for the medallion. I think it's, you know, less than $100 that the finders get to keep. I've worked with trying to get a prize together for this through donations in the community. Obviously, we can't give out just cash, you know, from the city. So that's where we'd rely on the Chamber to come up with, not rely on the Chamber, but work with our partners like the Chamber to get together like a prize basket. I think if we do it, we should have a substantial prize that there's more excitement around it, so people know that this basket's valued at $400 or whatnot. I think we've been a little slim on the prize element to it. So I'm happy to run a medallion hunt. I think end of February or early March would be a suitable timeline to plan and execute it, but just really don't know kind of we're at that pivotal stage of, do we try to keep Flake Festival going? Do we just have it be a city sponsored medallion hunt or something different? So with that, I'm just going to turn over and see if anyone has any comments or suggestions on what we'd like to do with that.
I must honestly say, I didn't even know we had them anymore, so it must have been very low key. And I didn't see any, like, big thing about clues. You know, when you have a medallion hunt, the big thing has to be the clue the next day, and you can't get it until a certain thing, and to build that memento of, and I guess I just missed all that when we had it, it was run like that. I think it was very fun. I know I was wrong on every one. They would never tell the park board where it was, but I was clear in my mind, I knew where it was, and I was never right. So, that's not a good thing. But, you know, it was built up a lot more, and it was a large prize. I don't know, the clues were, I just remember them, and I don't even remember any clues coming out with the medallion hunt. And if they did, they must have been where I don't look.
Yeah, so when I think you're talking about was when the Chamber was leading it, and I believe they did, I have from 2014 was the latest that I have. They had a big full color print thing in the Forest Lake Times, and I think they printed clues on a daily basis in the Forest Lake Times. And not having those resources, a lot of ours went to city website and social media to post clues that way. I will say last year, I think we had a pretty good turnout, and it took to the 5th clue to be found, and some of the hunters were looking for it and didn't find it. It was a resident. So I was like proud of that moment to know that someone in town was able to find it before the avid hunters. So that's, to answer your question, I think I agree there should be more if we're gonna do it, maybe reconnecting with the Forest Lake Times to post the Clues Daily.
And we'd have them at a certain time, they would come out, so everybody would be waiting, even if they didn't get it, to go on the website and find out the clue. I think just, if we're gonna do it, I think it has to just be a bigger event, and, I don't know about this prize, how we go about the poor businesses, I feel sorry for them sometimes. They're always hit, for things, and some of them are very generous all the time, and others don't ever contribute. So that would be my only thing, if we do it, I'd like it to be built up a little bit more than kind of like secretly where a few people know what's going on, and that's it.
What if we tied it into the spring fling? That's kind of a big thing, a start of it, and we could have a spring fling and also a medallion hunt instead of doing a medallion hunt in the winter.
I
We
never
could-
heard
we
of
could
it
do it in the
summer, but
spring.
why not? I don't know.
And that would be a,
Yeah, I think the snow probably helps with.
well, I know the snow covers it,
Right.
but
Although it wasn't in the snow last time.
No.
Did
But-
you know where it was?
We hit it.
Oh,
What was the prize last year?
A prize package with some donations from, Jimmy John's actually gave quite a few, I think there was like 20 free subs, which is, do the math, that's a good, deal. Couple t-shirts, I think, from the YMCA, American Legion and Benelli's have sponsored in the past, gift cards. I have talked to the chamber, to see if there would be more support there to help, reach out to local businesses who just wanna participate in it, but again, they are asked all the time, so.
that was another one.
I was wondering if,
No, they're happy to help reach out and
Oh, okay.
try to help get that prize package put together.
I was wondering if, so with both the spring fling and Santa, whatever we used to call it, the hometown holiday, with both of those events this year, we took a step back and really thought about what we wanted to do and invested some time into it and revamped it, and I think that went over really well for both of those events. I wonder if this is another opportunity to take a year off and step back and really think about what we wanna do here, and then come back next year with either a winter or a spring, wherever it falls, it gets put on the list of the events that we offer, and just, instead of trying to, I mean, it's basically February 1st, if you think about it, instead of trying to fling something together here and just, like I said, taking a step back to think about what do we really want, and it gets put on a week, and it's a repeatable, just like the spring fling and the holiday, hometown holiday.
Was the medallion hunt last year tied to the event?
Yes, in a sense, we tried to keep Flake Festival going, so basically what we did is we took, if you have the calendar of February, you got the Rotary plunges on that Saturday, the Friday before the Y did a free day at the YMCA. The following Monday, which has always been President's Day, we've promoted, free skating at the rinks with hot chocolate. So it's just been like about a 5 to 7 day window of when we would have Flake Festival, and that's how we promoted it, with the medallion hunt starting on like that Saturday of the plunge until found.
And now
So-
the plunge is
The 8th of February.
much sooner, which obviously gives us no time to.
And the city, really, just the efforts that we've had as a city to try to keep Flake Festival going is just in best effort to that. I don't know that, again, it used to be primarily led by the chamber. So that's the effort that we've taken to keep it going with no budget. The chamber used to sell buttons,
Mhm.
and have a pretty elaborate sponsorship package and opportunity just for Flake Festival.
The only other thing
Ice sculptures and,
I'm gonna ask is where does it fit in here? I just can't help myself. Cause we have one person, and if we're gonna look at doing it differently or making it more elaborate, what goes on this plan to fit in there?
I guess my comment would just maybe be, as we build a sponsorship package and talk about maybe adding events in the future, we've talked a little bit about like, what is our winter event? Is it Flake Festival? Do we host like a big bonfire, hot chocolate, winter carnival? I don't want to, not carnival, but do we bring about a winter event and something that we plan for and budget for and in the future? If we look at kind of where we're at with community events, because we really don't have that winter piece.
I think it's important what we do. We need to keep involvement in the community year round.
Mhm.
Winter's a big part of us
Mhm.
in general as Minnesotans.
I agree.
You know, the lakes that we have are important in the winter just as they are in the summer.
Mhm.
Although, you know, yes, there's more activity in the summer, but I'm part of a community that enjoys the winter on the lakes as well, so I think it's important. But that said, it may make the most sense to spend some time thinking about what that looks like going forward and not rushing into something like.
Well, that's why I said do something in the spring, because I don't think we have the time to do it this winter, so.
Right.
But
And I think that
maybe
is,
next winter.
that is a winter event, yeah.
It is.
I tried to issue a snowman challenge, but nobody seemed to take it up on it. There's one on our block now that's about 3 foot. But I was thinking too of having something in neighborhoods, not maybe a snowman, but something that people could participate outside in the winter.
Are you talking about like luminaries in the winter?
Maybe, that'd be pretty, around their
I'm gonna
snowman.
get those luminaries.
It could be a walk, you know, again, winter is so unpredictable.
Yeah, and I don't have the answer again, that's why it's a discussion tonight of how do we wanna move that forward. I know we talked a little bit about, what if instead of a medallion hunt, it's like a photo scavenger hunt, or we're utilizing technology in a different or innovative way, where you gotta go to certain landmarks and take a picture to show you were there and submit them to the city, or something like that. The Minnesota Park and Recreation Foundation has an annual grant opportunity twice a year. It's called New Initiatives Grant, but it's a new to your community, new innovative activity or program that can fund a couple $1,000s towards that. And it's always one of those annual grants that we just don't have an idea for, but maybe there's a new innovative fun thing to do as it relates to something like this.
So, yeah, maybe we could spend some time thinking about like inclusion, bringing the different groups together that would use these, our parks, different demographic, I don't know. Maybe there's an opportunity. Yeah.
And I like that idea too, and certainly that would work better in the spring clean time. I'm not saying that we wouldn't have a winter event, I think we, again, we should have a winter event. To me, you have 4 season events, that's just, and, I mean, my way of thinking would be to have one for each season.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely have a void, and it's not to say, I don't wanna say that we couldn't do a winter medallion hunt yet, because aside from ordering a medallion and finding a location for it, you write news and promote it and do a better job at that. So not to say that we couldn't still do that this winter. I'm not saying that, I think that we could, if we just wanted to run the medallion hunt this year, and maybe we put it on our work plan for Q3 or 4 to figure out a new winter plan
Figure out that.
for 2021.
Right, no, I,
So you
For
think you,
2021.
So like, let's just,
Nothing this year.
but she's saying.
Well, we-
She's saying this year.
if we think we would like to, I mean, I don't think it's gonna be called Flake Festival anymore, I think that's just kind of finally
So just do a medallion hunt.
like a
and
city-led
that's it.
medallion hunt.
Well, that would emphasize it more, it wouldn't get lost amongst the other things. I mean, you could do a big send-off with it, it'd be just the medallion. But if you're willing, that's a lot of work to put into the things and getting the prizes.
I think we take this 2020 off right now and redo it for next year. Because like I say, I was thinking, well, there's nothing to do right now. Let's do it in spring fling, because then there's more people. But if we just put the medallion hunt out, just to rush it through, why should we rush it through and not?
yeah, and that's not what I was suggesting,
Oh,
I'm suggesting
sorry.
in general,
Sorry.
that we
Okay.
have an event
Okay,
perfectly
okay.
okay with taking this winter off, as we obviously don't have time to plan.
Okay.
I just think that should get action added to the action plan, or somewhere in the events planning, that we do wanna make that a priority. I think, you know, it's okay, I think, if we take a time off,
but not a
But
forever
then if
trip.
we never come back to it,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
you're
it
right.
doesn't get on this document, then we
That's it.
can't get on it, then,
Yeah.
you know, we have to, I think, to keep that involvement in general. I
Yep,
think we
that
do.
makes sense.
I almost, think if we did it on the Q3-4, that would give us time to have an actual plan fleshed out, and then we could execute it better. We'd have it done by then December, ready to execute.
Well, and we can, if it's on the Q3 work plan, we
Right.
also have the sponsorship piece
Right.
figured out and distributed
Yeah.
at that point. So that gives us pretty much Q1 into Q2 to get that sponsorship program built, keep adding to it, and then keep adding to it. That, then we have a system in place and we can then be soliciting sponsorship of that event. And I do know, I think there was somebody who was interested in golf on the lake, for example, like a golf tournament on the lake. I just don't have the capacity to plan and coordinate a golf tournament on the lake right now, for a winter event. But I think thinking of what that looks like and where, and getting the right people involved too for 21 planning perspective, to have a good solid January event,
Mhm.
2021,
Yeah.
that we can tie in a medallion hunt to.
And I think I'm hearing all of the discussion here saying we don't have time, and yet I heard you clearly say there's plenty of time to do it now.
I wouldn't say there's plenty of time, but
All
what
we need
I,
is a medallion and the clues.
For just the medallion hunt, not for the
Right, well,
overall
that's
flag
what I think, I
festival.
wanna clear
I
up, because
would-
I think Janie was saying we do have time for a medallion hunt.
I would make it work into my schedule and to make it happen, we are faced right now with unique situations with basically 2 contracts or agreements to reestablish and reconfigure, which has taken a significant amount of my time, which has put other things, aside as I'm navigating through this. So there is a different workload right now, and the workload can kind of ebb and flow, but right now it is heavy in other areas that aren't as expected at this time. So I think I could make it work, but it also, there are other things on the table.
I think you're gonna have a lot of potential surprises that come up either between Castlewood or Fenway. I mean, there's a lot of work that needs to be done there.
The safe approach is to be comfortable to just table a medallion hunt this year. With it, the communication to the public and community is that we're reevaluating, and it's part of our work plan for 2021. I mean, that's the safe to be, making sure that we're being smart with the resources in time.
I think
Come
we,
back to the person that was added to, and she's supposed to be publicity, and I would think that'd be a big help. And she's supposed to work part-time with you or sometime with you, correct?
Starting July 1st.
On July 1st.
She's full-time July 1st.
Mostly, yeah, and then the role, him or her, will be primarily communications for the citywide, and then some support to the Parks
I
Department,
didn't know it was done until July.
July 1st.
Because that leaves that personnel to help. I was thinking that would be a great person to help with a medallion hunt.
the other thing we could do between now and then is kind of do what we've done on the other things and put out on Forest Lake happenings. We're reevaluating this event like we have the other ones. We'd like feedback. What would you like to see? Because that's what we did with the other.
You got a great, whatever you send it out to, group.
And
Came
the-
back with a lot of. good-
We got a lot of really good feedback that we incorporated into the events then, and we could do that so people would know that it's not that it's going away forever, but it's something we're gonna be working on, and we'd like to get some community input on it.
Have you participated in the past? Would you
Yep.
plan on participating if it happened? in the
Yep.
What kind of, maybe
What
it's
kind of
just a
activities or
start-
events would you like to see? I mean, we can do the same. And then we just circled back with them afterwards and said, thanks for your feedback. Here's what got incorporated as a result of your feedback,
So maybe a quick survey monkey with 5 or 6 questions related to the medallion hunt,
Yep.
posted on our city's Facebook page and website.
That's a great idea.
And then I think we
Okay.
With
do
other
the
women.
next door app, and we do Forest Lake happenings again too.
To get on that for sake happenings one of these days.
You're on it.
I can only open it up, and I can never see it because I have to put an app in or something. Because I can see the first part of their sentences, and then I go to click on the rest and it says, I'm not.
They're screening you.
Yeah,
I'm
maybe
kidding.
that's it.
I'm kidding.
I want to be on there.
Okay, everyone comfortable with that? I guess I'd push, if the feedback is to have a medallion hunt this year, we'd be looking at March then. By the time we could reconvene, gather the information and reconvene as a commission, I guess.
Two questions.
Sure.
One, how long has medallion hunt been continuously going?
I don't-
Does anyone know that?
I mean, I thought it stopped because it was so low key that I.
It hasn't, I've kept it
It's
going,
been
it
slow
hasn't
thing.
I
stopped.
kept it going.
So,
So I don't know the answer to that, I'd have to find out and get back to you.
with that, and then how soon can a Survey Monkey kind of feedback post be put out there to see how heartbroken the community would be if there wasn't a medallion hunt that I didn't even completely know. I know we've, briefly touched on it, but just from a community member, not a commission member, I wouldn't probably have known that it was
I
there, so.
Based on Forest Lake, what the feedback we've gotten when we posted out there that we're looking at redoing these events, blah, 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 blah. And based on that, I think people were honestly, I thought with the Easter egg hunt, people were gonna be really mad. But people gave us, it was an opportunity for them to give some input, so I think they were okay with it. And then we did make sure we circled back around and said, thank you. Obviously, we can't implement every piece of feedback, but here's the feedback that's been implemented. And I think for the most part, people were okay with it, as long as they knew what was going on. That's how it felt to me anyhow. I think the hometown holiday, it was the same thing. I mean, we didn't implement everybody's ideas, but they seem to be, it's almost like as long as you're communicating,
Weird.
you know?
Weird how
Is that how that
works,
works?
right?
That would be heard.
Forest Lake Happenings, where is it, how do you get on it, and how many people are on it now?
So I can tell you so we had it on the city's Facebook page as well, but then Forest Lake Happenings is one of the community, Facebook pages, and there's a lot of people that are on that. And then the Nextdoor app is another community that hits every community in Forest Lake, and so
But
I
you
would
have to
guess
sign in for
thousands.
that.
You have to sign up for both, either the Nextdoor app you have to sign up for, or you have to go into Facebook, and so it doesn't hit everybody.
Yeah, it's
It hits the
beautiful.
social media side of things, and then you've got the city website, and, so,
So there's about 4,400 members
Okay,
on Forest Lake Happenings, it's kind of a,
that's pretty good.
yeah.
I feel like it was like 1,200 on
20%
Nextdoor, but I could be wrong. It could be up
20,
from now.
18-20%.
Yeah, next door for a while, and all I got was, has
Yeah.
anybody
Yeah,
seen
over
my
20.
cat?
Yeah.
Well, if you're at Forest Lake Happenings, someone
That's
said,
a decent amount.
is anyone
but
missing a peacock?
Certainly there's,
So,
But if you found your cat for
There's
that, you'd be
room
happy.
for-
yeah,
trying to
So-
figure the other avenue to reach others, but, I think getting back, especially once we go, with whatever event it is, we certainly get the print media, Forest Lake Times involved on it.
sure.
I just
Uh,
think
and all the
it's
events to me,
what they-
because
What they think.
that's-
I'd be happy to get that in.
So to answer the part one, I
Yep.
don't know how long it's been continuously happening without a lapse of time, so I can find out, but to answer question two, I would say by this Friday.
Oh.
Seems reasonable.
Did people get back with their answers?
I could probably get a quick Survey Monkey thing together tomorrow with a link
Yeah.
Okay.
and get it out
Yeah,
and
that'd be
then
great.
see. We don't have to talk about it now, but there may be a need for, as I said earlier, we don't wanna have a bunch of extra meetings if we don't have to, but if, we may have a need for an extra meeting, kind of tentatively, once we talk about the Castlewood piece, a little bit earlier in February before our, meeting, so we may, if we have that one, I think we can kind of move some of that forward a little bit, get caught up a little on,
Sure.
and this could be one of them,
Mhm.
based on
Yeah.
feedback, and then we decide from there. So with that,
That's part.
yeah, and just kind of
I think we should make it, I think we should wait and do it the right way.
we'll see, we'll
No,
decide on it.
Yep.
But in
We'll see what
essence
this
of
says.
time, I'm
Yep.
just gonna talk really briefly about this tonight. Woody McBride and I are going to start kind of the process of really setting our schedule, a draft schedule with the dates aligned. He did send over a very high-level list of, what he's kind of proposing as of now, not really tied to dates yet. I have a couple dates that we know have to be with a certain performer. I just wanted to bring this before you, if there's any quick comments on, what what you see, if there's any groups that you know of that you wanna add to this list as we're piecing the 13 weeks together. Fills up really quick when you got a lot of interest, so, 2 tribute bands. Centennial Community Band, they have not been at Arts in the Park in the last few years, and we unfortunately had some communication challenges last year, so we advised they'd be, considered and welcomed back this year after having a few years off. They're preferring a June date. Brio Brass Band was rescheduled, so was Laval Jazz. Bluegrass Country, some summer fun music, World Culture Night.
Have we
Kids
had
night.
that before? World Culture Night?
We've in the past tried to incorporate like one cultural.
Just so it's loud and a lot of action, because they're not down there to find out about cultures, they're down there to be entertained. And if it's not loud, they don't like that. They like a lot of people. You know, one singer does this, so I don't know what World Culture Night would look like, but that would be one I would question, I'd wanna know more about it.
So maybe we'll bring forward one World Culture Night option to look at as just the hot, loudest,
Well, yeah.
most vibrant of them that we.
I talk to a lot of people that go down there and they say the one thing they wanna do is they're down there and they wanna be able to hear it, have a lot of action, a lot of movement, a lot of excitement. I mean, they don't like to have just one quiet person singing or,
Which is probably why the bands that did well last year and people really talked about were, I mean, it's the more popular stuff.
they're bigger and,
And that might just be how our event is transitioning over time too, of, it's more of like like a
Concert
true
series
concert in the
versus-
park versus just music in the park. Meaning it's more of a performance with a larger group instead of, you know, just maybe one person performing. And I'm not discrediting anybody that is a
No.
single solo artist, cause they're fantastic as well.
but for a
What is the
celebrity-
Centennial Community Band?
It's a local group, it's pretty impressive, it's a 50-member, group band, and,
It's excellent.
it's really great. And I was actually gonna propose maybe having them kick off the season,
Oh,
so that in the event, hopefully not, that there's a weather issue, we still would have time to work with them to get them into the schedule. So I was kind of thinking a community kickoff night with them.
So do we have Brio Brass, Laval Jazz, Centennial Community Band, are they too much alike?
Yeah, they seem
I get that
Brio-
they have different music, but like Brio Brass is a bigger,
ensemble.
ensemble type, so.
Yeah, they're gonna be similar in nature that we'd wanna at least separate them out in our schedule, otherwise, I guess with Rio Brass Band, per our agreement, like, to reschedule, June has five Tuesdays, 6 isn't possible, but, sorry, I was thinking the month of June, 6. So there's 5 Tuesdays in June, so I was thinking if we kicked off with Centennial Community Band, that gives us enough time to schedule Brio Brass Band at a later time. Generally, it takes a couple weeks to kind of get everyone up and going, it's a busy time of year, so, if someone goes right away because they're super excited Arts in the Park's kicking off, you might hit a different group later on that didn't even know we had Centennial Community Band
Sure.
as
and
people.
Centennial Community Band brings out a lot of people, cause a lot of them are very local around here, and so all their friends and family come.
Tom Petty and Journey seem awfully similar, I get that they're not, but it's that same kinda, I feel like we have a lot of repetition or same genres here a little bit, and I'm wondering, so the other thing I was wondering is, clearly these are probably ones Woody has used in other communities, and I would be curious to know, like, High 48's Bluegrass, how many people, if they were used in Lindstrom, for example, how many people actually, were they a draw, or, I think this is an opportunity for us to have some really good quality bands that are a good draw into the community, the vendors are happy when that happens, and are these it? So is there a way to get from Woody, what other cities have you used these in? I'd volunteer to make some phone calls to that city to ask how many people come, how was it received, what kind of feedback did you get before I just think we have an opportunity here to cause I'm not seeing a lot of
Did
wowers.
they stay? That's a big way of judging too, you
Not
get a
People
crowd,
stay, yeah,
and then
people
all of a
stay.
sudden, they're gone.
I'm just
Centennial
not
And were they
seeing a
there
lot
I'm
of-
not
despite
saying
a,
it's about getting
rainstorm?
Oh, I wanna
terribly
go.
excited.
People waited
I
out
like
for a
the
rainstorm for a
Doctor
good
Eddie
band.
but
I like
I
them
think
too,
they'll be
but-
good, separated apart, I think, you know. Do you have last year's list by chance, Andy?
I can grab that, just give me 1 second here as you guys kind of think about, this is gonna go off for just a minute while we
Yeah.
kind of discuss.
I just
Um,
feel like, I agree with, if
one-
I was looking at those two.
If
those
I'm,
would be
you know,
good.
if I'm going to a concert series, I am not gonna go to a bunch of them that are the ensemble band pieces.
Community
It's not gonna draw me out there.
band, Centennial Community Band needs to change their name. It sounds like a bunch of guys, you know,
That are-
practicing in their garage.
The band leader is from our high school, he's the music director, I mean, they're very, yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with you, if you don't know what they are,
Yeah,
that doesn't sound like something you're gonna go out for.
And this year we have some that we have to fill because we didn't get to use them last, but there, when I look at
Oh, yeah,
that
we
list,
have to
it doesn't
use
make
the-
me go, ooh, let's, like, mark your
Super.
calendar now for,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Well, a couple of things, so, did we have Elvis last year? We did, right, yeah. He's always a popular one, we did not have him in 2018, so the Elvis has just been one of those, like, groups that just brings the crowd, and you just know, like, yes, Elvis is back, so you get that kind of answer to that one. Kids and Family Night, just the big epic show we had last year, I thought they did a good job, they've called a few times, they wanna be considered again. We have, I guess for discussion is, do we wanna rotate that out and do something different? We have another great opportunity at the table, Trisha and the Toonies, they perform at Minnesota State Fair, and, another really engaging, exciting, event, so I'm just wondering, like, discussion-wise, should we pursue something different there for Kids and Family Night instead of having the same group back next year? Because they are interested, but, maybe our goal is to try to keep things somewhat new and fresh every year in our lineup. So,
Did that Toonies person, do they have anything other than just them, or would they be, here we had, a couple of different things, would they be just them all night?
they would not be the full night, but they would be about an hour of the,
Okay,
which is a good chunk of it.
so
And we could
citizens that
coordinate
see
something
the
else.
family night, they might wanna come a little later, but there is something for them to come and listen to us.
Like, I would say, like, of a Kids and Family Night, Trisha and the Toonies would be the headliner.
Okay,
Kind of queue up some things prior, and then that's your main act of the night. So just, that might be helpful if we kind of nail that down.
Yeah, I think if we run the same every single year, that's probably not
Favorable.
and
Yeah,
that's
I think
definitely
you
one
wanna-
was really well received, I thought, I don't even like them, but you should think there was a huge crowd.
There was, I've never seen that many people.
which
at the
one?
I've
park.
never,
Yeah,
let
it's
that
gonna
let
be,
us
it's
know?
gonna,
We
Yeah.
have some feedback if we bring them back, though, I've kept track of it from last
good or
year.
bad, cause I've heard only good.
I think the music was good, but the atmosphere in the park was different, and that's
Oh.
where we got some
Yeah.
feedback we have to consider.
And the performance was great and everything, but loud.
Yeah, very loud, nobody could
And,
complain.
resonated far across the lake.
Mhm.
yeah.
So, but I mean,
Well,
I
I
think
didn't hear about any
happy-
problems, but I did hear a lot of, and you have to like them, I mean,
there was probably more
Yeah.
positive about it than not for that kind of,
what a
Did
crowd.
it
Well,
seem to
same with
bring
the
more,
Church of Cash, that was a
um,
huge crowd.
from outside the community than inside the
Excellent.
community?
There was a lot, I would guess that there was a lot outside the community with this
Just
group,
because of the group
Followers.
itself,
Yeah.
followers,
yeah.
which, I don't know, you can make a case both ways, but to me,
Right.
it's supposed to be a community event, so I can see where that could happen.
I think our intent is to really develop a good concert series that we can be proud to offer in the community so that people, residents and neighboring communities are, like, Forest Lake's the place to be for the concert series, and
Right.
there is some good to, drawing people into Forest Lake, or the place to be for the,
So this year
Hometown.
we added, because of the 4th of July, we added that week back on, is that a place for Centennial? I don't know, Rio Brass and Centennial, I think are gonna be very, very
How
Well,
many do we have this year?
13, I believe, and I think if you put, that was July 7th, I believe, is a Tuesday.
Yeah.
I mean, if you put one of those in the middle of the series, you're not gonna really have as much room to separate them out.
Okay.
I haven't talked to Brio Brass Band, I can certainly do that, I think Centennial Community Band should be in.
And I think they should be the first
Well,
one because they bring in so many.
Yeah, I think that seems like a good
the,
fit for community.
for the brass band and the jazz, both those were, expenses were already paid though, is that accurate?
They were paid, in 2019 expense.
They're good, I mean,
And
I've
LaVelle Jazz,
heard them and they're
Well, I'm just
good,
wondering if
but-
it makes the most sense to have them, at least have them there because that's paid, I don't know.
yeah,
Or do we-
LaVelle Jazz,
or losses on
Like Jason and I said, we both wanted the Church of Cash to come back because we both thought they were excellent. Way excellent. You close your eyes, you thought for sure Johnny
it.
Cash.
That was there.
So I didn't
So-
see a couple of these that I'm hearing were good last year that people liked on the new list. Is there a reason for that? Is there a reason, was Johnny Cash on the new list?
I believe that they were there in 2018 as well, so this would be their third year back, which I'm not saying
Okay.
is wrong, but that
Well-
probably is why.
Okay,
The Farmer's Daughter was new last year, I thought they were a good country band. The Elvis, again, we've had for several years, then he had a year off and was back just last year.
okay.
The
So-
Bell
so
Jazz
then-
you might be able to use for the cultural evening, cause they do Latin music too, so they might be one that you could plug in.
So I think out of this list, we know we're gonna have, Rock and Hollywoods, I think, has just been set as our
Why
end
do
of
we,
season.
why, I mean, is that another opportunity where, I mean, we've always done the Rock and Hollywoods, is there anybody else out there that would be?
I was just gonna ask that question, because we were talking about, like, Elvis and Church of Cash, and we've got them every couple, 2-3 years now, and so do we wanna switch that out, or?
I just think part of it's tradition, longstanding history of how many summers, 30-some years, or however many, maybe that's the wrong number, of performing it
It's been
a
that
really
long.
long time, that I think that one's just built in
They've
as
been
so much
first-
of tradition.
They did first some of the years, the first one, and then when it was switched with the corn thing, then they were.
For the last one.
So,
And-
so just because it's been a long-standing tradition for
I
30
think that's
years,
the only reason that I have.
we,
I'm big on tradition.
You know,
I'm
I'm not
big
far
on-
along with you on that, cause I wouldn't mind, I can see on some level, we look, okay, if you're really excited every summer to go see Church of Cash, and then they're not there, are you completely disappointed in the whole series, because
I think a
you're
lot
not
of
getting-
people
so I think
really,
tradition is important to a lot of people.
or just, I think it comes back to something name recognition, and when you flip back to this year's, I don't see a lot of name recognition. I don't see our Church of Cash on, our new Church of Cash on.
Right.
Or.
well, and some of these haven't even been filled in yet of like, what is that country western or country night, that's a big tribute band or popular group. So what I think I'm hearing here, what was your comment? You thought that, I guess if you had to pick out of these two tribute bands, if you think that they're kind of similar, which one would you rather keep?
Journey,
So should we
Yeah.
propose we
Journey,
consider the Journey
you could,
and maybe one other tribute band that has a little bit more, sorry, it's just hard to do it this way, that has a little more recognition with the community? I'll just leave it right now.
Well, if Johnny Cash was so good last year, so some word of mouth might get more people to it this year as well.
Right.
Well, and the other piece is like the Johnny Cash and the Zed Zeppelin, they have groupies. I hate to say it, but
Yeah,
they,
they
they
do.
have groupies. So what other big band is out there that has a following, and what do they sing, and what is there to look at? I don't know.
So we want to find out what other like big name tribute bands would have the following and get people excited in the community if they were to look at our schedule and say, oh wow, they have this is new this year, and it's this this tribute band that they'd be really excited about. I think to your point of conversation on Church of Cash, if that's getting people excited in there,
And getting them here, then.
they're gonna see the schedule and say, yes, Church of Cash is back. I think is that how that might be taken.
Mhm.
It's not stale. It's not something that we need to.
The groupies are good or bad,
I think they're good. I mean,
okay?
like Church of Cash, the way we found him was, I mean, if you are out in South Dakota, you hear that they're having Church of Cash. If you're in Montana, Church of Cash is
Yeah.
gonna be there.
Yeah.
So here's a band that falls within our price range, that no matter where you go around the country,
Seems
you
people
hear
know,
about,
like 'em, they-
you know what I mean? So what is that, what's our next Church of Cash?
I might have one, I'll have to talk to somebody about it, but yeah, finding another,
There's an eighties band that I gave you that also came from music, the guy that has Music Land. I think it's his band and he's here in Forest Lake.
music
That-
connection.
Music Connection, thank you. Music Land, wow, I dated myself there. That might be another one, I don't know.
Okay.
There's just, I feel like we're missing that.
I'm- From the tradition standpoint, certainly if they're gonna bring excitement every year, I mean, if it's a tradition that's not bringing any excitement, then,
Actually,
you know,
I
I
have,
don't know.
I just thought of somebody that I can talk to also.
What if we replace Church of Cash with Rockin' Hollywood?
We replace Rockin' Hollywood with
Church of Cash.
Oh, okay.
I don't,
No,
Rockin' Hollywood's
put Church of Cash
pretty
in
good.
where Rockin' Hollywood.
I think it's
Yeah.
hopping with the cornfield, I don't know if I could, I wanna listen to
So
the
how about
Johnny
this
Cash,
in-
I wanna dance with the.
How about this, cause this was just the first peek at the starting point to do what we did tonight, which is very helpful so that we're more effective in getting, I don't wanna come forward with like
Yeah.
our fancy draft series and then have that conversation, so this gives me the opportunity to take this feedback and kind of revisit the list, and I think I know what we're looking for a little bit. I think Church of Cash would still be a potential, Rockin' Hollywood's keep on there,
Just don't burn them out.
Well, the
Like,
two freebies.
I don't want 30 years of Church of Cash.
yeah. Well, we're pretty committed to Laval Jazz is set for the
79.
28th,
Yeah.
which I think is fine, so we plug that into the schedule as we start attaching the dates to the groups.
There's some
Um,
concern about World Culture Night.
yep,
I like when you say they have like, what'd you say they have?
Latin.
Latin America, if it's, you know, kind of fun, festive. that
They're,
kind of-
they're good,
Well-
I think they're good.
So
but
are
it's
Pirates
more
and
upbeat.
Guitars, is that Jimmy Buffett? Kind of
it's,
stuff.
you know, something
Is
probably
that
like
the
that.
one of his acts?
This is what I'm not certain on that one, so I'll kind of
Or is he just throwing,
clarify.
is that just a idea?
Might be an
That's what it
idea.
sounds to me like, a Jimmy Buffett type of theme
Yeah.
thing, which I think is,
That'd be
Fitting.
good, yeah.
Yeah,
You've got a big following.
Yeah, that would be. The other thing is I was approached by somebody that may be interested in sponsoring a 60s band. So if,
okay.
I don't, is Rockin' Hollywood considered 60s?
Or 50s.
50s?
Yeah, 50s, 60s, yeah.
I don't know, but
Okay,
50s, 60s.
I need to get more information from them, but I don't know if there would be the possibility, if they are interested in paying for that and sponsoring it, if we could work in a 60s band.
Have we
That's
that
had,
good.
makes sense to me.
have we had the Beatles?
we have had the Beatles once, they were good, they were
And that's
good.
gonna be a, I mean, to me, I would think that would be a good draw.
I think just overall, again, is when people look at that concert series to be, you know,
Lindstrom
our goal isn't probably to
is-
have every single night be the best man in the world and, you
No.
know,
Right?
but a good, every band that we bring forward, a group, is a high quality.
Lindstrom has quite a following.
How did we get the word out last year? I don't remember, because they used to put it, SRC used to put it in the water bill. And they
Yeah.
had the program itself. That went
Yeah,
through, I
we
that
put
was
it in
a
our
great one.
utility billing, we put a statement on there, we don't do inserts in the utility billing anymore. I think once it's in the Forest Lake Connections, I think we did one thing on the Forest Lake Times, and then our website, social media, hand them out to, you know, send it out via email for Friday folders, the schools and things like that. But I do think we need to put together a list of, let's make sure we're distributing it to all means and not just relying on social media and website.
It'll be a good piece there for sponsors to have their logo on it.
Yep, and that's where I think that'll tie in really well with the deadlines we have in place. So with that, I think I know what I need to do here. I'll meet with Woody and we'll send over, if you guys come up with any groups or if you're just like now curious, because sometimes I get curious and just go find
Yep.
something, just send them over to me. I'm supposed to meet with Woody on Thursday afternoon, not to say that anything after that can't be considered or discussed, but just let you guys know. Alright. Should I jump into the last?
Phelps Park.
Alright,
Just a-
so we,
that's just a quick one, right?
I have there's a meeting at 7 o'clock in here, so we have about 10 minutes to kind of get through this last little segment here. I think this is the Phelps Park Master Plan, next steps. Just really briefly, I presented to the Forest Lake Rotary last week on this project, which was their local 2019 fundraising project for the, that we were awarded some of their fundraising dollars. And I just wanted to give them an update on where we're at in this process, and really, you know, I kind of told the story and provided our most up-to-date master plan. But really, you know, the timeline and the next steps is really looking at this cost analysis that we have in front of us. Obviously, it's a big ticket number. This is, I would say, your premier, highest end, probably couldn't get much more expensive than that. And we really need, I think, start looking at opportunities to scale that down. I'm gonna pull it up on the screen here. I didn't print a copy. So really just kind of outlining, the next steps in this is looking at this phased approach that we've had Bolton and Mank put together. Here's a two-phase approach. You know, it's expensive, but I think if you look through each of these line items, we need to, I think as a small group, committee group, start going through and seeing how we can get this cost down and bring that back to the commission with a more realistic price. You know, this port-in-place surfacing, I mean, that's $150,000. For example, one way we can reduce that cost is maybe we don't have the whole entire surface area port-in-place surfacing. Some cities will do areas where it's port-in-place, and then they'll do the wood chips for the rest. That's just an example. I'm not saying that's what we'll do, but that's one way you can significantly reduce costs for that expensive surface. Again, similarly, like looking at some of these line items, the building, $500,000. I know, you know, Jason and Deb were talking about partnering with the school. Can somebody build that? I think when you're doing a cost analysis at this stage, it is pretty high level because you can, there's so many ways you can go. So I think as a small group, I think we'll get going on looking at some of these bigger ticket items and seeing if we can slim those down a little bit and see if we can come to the table with a more realistic and obtainable goal for a budget that might put this in sight to be completed a lot sooner than what would be the case with this price. So with that, I believe it was Doug and Jack, so we'll have to reconvene on who else might want to connect on that group.
Doug, Jack, and Jason.
And it looks like you've already kind of been doing a little homework on it. And
Well, I've just looked at stuff, and you know, do we really need to do anything with the ball field? That's a lot of money for.
I spent a little time there recently, taking my kids sledding, and there's probably some room to save all across the board.
Absolutely,
And-
there is.
And just from, I build things, you know, daily and put budgets together, and most of the time these budgets are over budgeted instead of under. And just some of the things, I mean, what is mobilization and what is the 55,000 behind me? I don't, you know, if
And
someone
yeah.
wants to work, they're gonna mobilize, okay, so.
Right.
I think that's just kind of a general, they probably put that into any kind of budget that they're kind of doing, so I think there's a lot of room.
Yeah.
Come down when they go up.
Yeah.
I think
And
there's
it
a
makes
lot of,
people feel better when
Right.
you go down, right? If you're going over budget, then no one likes that.
and I don't want to put a dollar amount on where we would get, but let's just say we can get to like $750,000. I mean, that's still a big number, but given some of,
Much
but
more attainable.
it's much more obtainable within the next couple of years, given our park dedication account and other grant opportunities. And maybe, you know, people see that and see the project and they want to buy into it as another partner. So I'm just throwing that number out as like being somewhat comfortable, even though it's still a lot of money. So do you want to get a meeting set to start working on this? Because I should be, or whenever you're available, or communicate over the phone, or,
Yeah, why don't I get in touch with you and we can
and we can talk about what we think we can get done before the next meeting, but I think it's important to keep this as it's,
Yeah,
Next.
yep,
as it's next on, you're on that group?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
yeah.
And I'd
Um,
be happy, sorry to interrupt, but I'd be
Jump in
happy
for
to
Jack.
jump in too.
that'd be helpful, I think, with your background and.
Yeah.
So we'll get kind of connected on that in the near future. It follows the work plan to keep that going and just, it's gonna be a process. I don't want people to think that this is gonna happen overnight, but to really just start chipping away and keep it moving so
Yeah.
that even if we say we have an updated
I don't wanna
cost
lose
analysis.
Castlewood, but I'm
Yep.
gonna just ask one more thing. Have you met with St. Peters yet to find out if there's any kind of partnership?
We have not continued that conversation yet,
Okay.
just because of, we haven't really
We're not
made any,
anywhere with it.
we aren't, we haven't, since we've got the phased approach from Bolton and Mank and the pricing, that's kind of where we ended everything. That was October.
Well, I think the parking is very important, and so
Mhm.
I think
They took their trees down by themselves.
they did. I mean, that was one thing that would have been easy for the city to help with, and it would have created a little bit of a partnership. Now that's gone, so I'm just thinking, we don't have to leave them till the end.
Yeah,
To say, are we still on, because bathrooms was big for them, bathrooms was big with the city.
Yep.
With the.
so what I'll do, I think this is the first time we're revisiting this since October,
Yeah.
just given the nature of how the last few months have gone. So we can get them back in the loop and we'll talk of how we do that and what that next step is with St. Peter's as well. So, any questions on that? Oh, we're just finishing up a quick meeting, so.
Oh, sorry.
I mean,
Thought
you're
this was
welcome
a
to,
group.
you're welcome to
sit
join,
in.
but
You're a community person.
yeah, it's your community. Everyone good on that then, and just
Yep.
keep that going? Alright, and then, I'm gonna keep this short and sweet, also just staff updates, obviously I've tried to keep some communication up about Castlewood Golf Course. At the first city council meeting of this year, Patrick Casey, our city administrator, did a really thorough update on the Castlewood Golf Course, situation of what transpired since mid-September to now. I'm happy to provide a little information, but that's a good video to go back and watch his presentation on that. But just in short, our November meeting, we saw a draft agreement with JT Walker Enterprises, which was approved to council, and council had it as a discussion, and not a lot of discussion, but nothing that was concerning of not wanting to move forward either. But just after the Thanksgiving holiday, we received notification that the manager had a change of mind and was not gonna move forward. So from around Thanksgiving until over the next month, we probably went through about 4 or 5 different offers good offers to consider moving forward in our agreement, and just kind of a yes, no, a couple times, and ultimately just a personal decision to move forward, despite some great offers by the city as we tried to negotiate a contract. So from that final no, after a few renditions, we did release an RFP that we're just seeking out proposals to see if anyone's interested to manage the course for Castlewood. Questions were due to the city last week, and I sent responses yesterday, just more like budget questions on what this expense is for operating, just some logistical things. And responses are due to the city next Friday for the RFP, in which then the city will just look at those and they'll at some point get over to the Parks Commission as we navigate through that process.
Is there good activity there, would you say?
Not in the
Meaning,
beginning.
a lot of people asking questions about it. Does it look like you're gonna get a good response? How many people are to play? How many,
I think there's 5 groups that are in, and 3 of which I think they're all interested. I think 3 of them are pretty interested. I would say I'm anticipating hopefully 3 good responses just from the feedback I've received. Maybe a 4th.
really experience?
Yeah, they all
There's
are.
another example of, we better treat someone that we get very well to keep them, because you will never replace Jeremy, I don't care how many RFPs you put out there. And you can ask anyone who's golfed there, or lives there, or lives in this community.
Yeah.
What they think of Castlewood, it's a #1 asset. And to not be proactive and to reach out to him to make sure we keep him.
Well,
I would
it's-
strongly encourage you to watch the city council meeting. Patrick did a very nice job documenting all the back and forth that was occurring there,
I will watch it, but I also talk to many people.
I guess I worked it on a daily, weekly basis with Jeremy since September 18th when we first talked about it, and I think I had over 50 emails and 10 meetings and phone calls and great offers to him, and I think I just respect his personal decision to move forward, and I'm bummed to not have him continue given knowing him as a person. We have good rapport. He even called me after the fact and is very supportive of helping as we transition. I think he wants the city to continue to have it be a good amenity, and that's our goal as a city and a commission, that it's a legacy that was great in the community, and I'm sad to see him leave too. He's a great guy and great for the community. But like I said, I've worked with him. I have a timeline, and it's pretty much daily, weekly, where we've
And I believe you have, and I
communicated.
believe a lot of people have, because once they figured out that he was really not treated the way somebody like that should have been treated, then a lot of people certainly encouraged him. I think Kathy Bystrom would be sitting here saying the same thing, do anything we could to encourage him. And was it too late at that point? That's what I'm saying. So I think it's something for us to remember as a community, that if you have a gold mine in somebody, that you reach out to them early, and let them know how much you want them, to get a contract and all of that. So I'm venting a little bit, but
That's okay.
it's just really sad to me, because I'll watch the
think
show,
it's-
but I also probably will have something from before that little timeline that didn't happen, that maybe should have.
And I think it's also important if we don't know his situation and whether or not, I think he's not in a great spot either. If he does want to do something different, that's his choice as well. And if he's got people pressuring him and, well, what did they say? Well, what did they do? Well, we should help you. I think at some point, I know I would want to be respected for whatever decision and be allowed to move on. And I think that's where we're at with this is, I think he did, everybody would say he's done an amazing job at this, but there also becomes a point too where you need to respect him and his decision instead of, the more we turn this, the more he gets dragged back into the spotlight again and
Well, I agree with you 100%, but you have to go before all of that happened, before any of his personal decisions came into play, what was happening at that point, and what encouraged him to make it.
we don't know. None of us know that, right? I mean, none of us sitting, probably the only two people that probably know that would be Jamie and Jamie.
Well,
It would be Jeremy, for sure.
So,
Yeah, and so
right,
just a little
probably city
history,
council.
I guess the history, I started in 2015 when the agreement had already been in place, and my first renewal of a contract with Jeremy was just kind of a copy paste, everything, let's move forward. And I think that maybe which I think you're stating is maybe the city has to have, even though we have agreements in place with contractors or third parties, maybe we need to have a quarterly meeting and be engaged regularly, whereas because we had an agreement in place, I didn't have any involvement with Castlewood Golf Course up until just recently when it was time to renew a contract, and I was going into this thinking, okay, are there any adjustments to this, thinking minor and great, and then all of a sudden it's like, actually, maybe not. So that's where this, just as a few months ago was my first real involvement because of a long-standing agreement in place and everything's been going well with out of sight, out of mind. If you don't hear otherwise that something's not going well,
Well, and I think you coming in knew.
By being both
certainly
parties.
I'm not faulting you, it was way before, whoops, you're in, but it wasn't before the contract. And I think that's where we can reach out to people, rather than have them have to reach out to us, to reach out to people and say, your contract's coming up, what are we gonna be looking at to keep you? What are we gonna be talking about here? Instead of waiting until, isn't my contract coming up?
I think that kind of goes both ways. I
Well,
mean,
I'm sure it
If
can.
you're not happy with something, which I'm sensing is partly the case, then you should voice your opinion in a proper manner. So, that's my 2 cents.
Oh, we did. Believe me.
well, I just think we're in the here and the now and we're moving forward, and I think the city's obtained the keys to the property. We have a good positive relationship as we're transitioning. I'm still in communication. We're evaluating our options to stay focused on offering a low-cost, high-quality recreational amenity to the community. Business, that has to continue.
Is he staying with Fenway?
Yeah, we've talked about that and just
Okay.
waiting to get their contract. I mean, everything I think is, despite the fact that they're, you know, he's no longer moving forward as our operator of the course, I think it's been, you know, a transparent and good, I mean, I've been navigating that process, and I would say otherwise, if I didn't feel that way, I think that it's, we've been working well to get through this, and I'm focused on what's next and how we get there and make sure we have golf in the spring to our residents and community. And I think that's the focus, and I think the takeaway is, as we establish agreements and we put it on our work plan, any new agreements that come forward, maybe it's you're required to have a quarterly meeting with the city or check-in, because it does kind of go two ways. If we don't hear from you that something's not working well, and we don't check in to say, is everything going okay? If that's not happening from either party, then you're gonna run into situations where it's
Back to the communication piece, right?
communication, which
It's weird how that works.
which
so
is, we are adding that
Yep.
communications person, soon, so I think that'll
That'd
be
be,
helpful.
that'd be good, and I am curious to know more at some point.
So what,
To the point is it's going.
what session was that, which council meeting was it?
It's just the last
The
one.
January
January.
13th or 12th, what's the first Tuesday, Monday of the month, let me see. I'll get that for
It was
you.
very
They
good.
went as far as to offer full-time
13.
employment.
I think it was 13th one.
So,
It was very good.
it was very, Patrick did it, and I would be probably Patrick's worst critic, because I expect a lot out of a city manager. And I thought he did a very nice job kind of laying out what's happened back and forth and where things are at.
So I know there was a
Good
video-
television For tonight.
There was a video issue on that, so if it's not up, I did inquire to see when that would be up, knowing I was gonna tell you guys to check that out. So if it's not up,
When I tried to
Yeah,
watch it, it
so
wasn't.
if you go
They
look
had-
tonight and it's not there, just give it a day or two, and I'll let you know when it's up there, but it'd be good to watch.
Before we adjourn really quick, I just wanted to say thank you to you and Karen and Jason for the hometown holiday. Because I thought it went really well. We haven't met since then, and so thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
A lot of,
You were
a lot of
integral
good,
part.
good
Yeah.
feedback.
It went
from
well,
that.
I think, yeah.
Kinda like the spring fling, it was
Yeah.
just something that clicked with people.
Yeah, it was, and
So
Vanilla, I
thank you
mean,
for all your
Oh,
input.
everything.
Yeah, it was I think it was an overall a good team effort and win for the city and parks and commission and everybody, so thank you to everybody.
Yeah. That's
So-
why I said it's a good group of
Adjourn.
Adjourn?
Second.
Motion? Oh, you,
I
I
can,
second.
I made
Oh.
a motion to
I'll
adjourn,
second.
and you seconded it? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
all right,
Goodness,
thanks
no,
guys.
I- no,
I went-